These are the pants.
You are not wearing those pants, Frank. You're just like an animal.
Animals don't even like pants.
They were the kings and queens of comedy. But the end of their lives was anything but funny. From rare cancers to sudden heart failures, these diseases took down the strongest pillars of television history. You might know their catchphrases, but you have no idea about the battles they fought in private. One actor on this list even kept working while he could barely stand. 1. Jack Sue on Barney Miller.
The monkey fur dashboard. Maybe it wasn't stolen. Maybe it ran away.
If you watched TV in the late 70s, you probably remember the gritty and funny police station of the 12th Precinct. The show was Barney Miller, and it was unlike anything else on air. It showed cops doing paperwork and dealing with strange people in New York City. One of the best parts of that show was Detective Nick Yemena. He was played by the brilliant actor Jack Sue. Nick was known for two things. He had a very dry sense of humor, and he made the absolute worst coffee in the world. It was a running joke that his coffee tasted like old motor oil or rainwater from a gutter. Jack Sue had amazing comedic timing. He could make you laugh just by looking over the top of his glasses or shifting a file on his desk. He was a pioneer for Asian American actors because he played a regular guy, not a stereotype. But while the audience was laughing at his coffee jokes, Jack was fighting a very serious battle. In his real life, he was a heavy smoker, which was very common back then. Sadly, he developed esophageal cancer. This is a disease that affects the tube connecting your throat to your stomach. It is a very painful and difficult condition. The show was still filming when Jack got sick. He started losing weight, and you could see he was getting tired. But he was a professional. He kept coming to work and making people laugh for as long as he could. In 1979, the cancer spread very quickly. The cast and crew were devastated when he passed away at the age of 61. To honor him, the show did something very special. They broke the fourth wall and did a tribute episode where the actors stepped out of character to talk about how much they loved Jack. It was a touching moment for a man who gave so much joy. It is sad to see a funny man go down that way, but losing a TV detective is one thing. What happens when the father of the most perfect family in America is hiding a secret that is eating him up inside? 2. Robert Reed on the Brady Bunch.
We're all dressed up. So is Tiger.
Sorry, fellas. Tiger stays home. Now, this is just for the family.
Alice is gonna be there.
Alice is a member of the family.
Here is the story of a man named Brady. Mike Brady was the ultimate television dad. He had permed hair, wide ties, and a piece of advice for every problem. The Brady Bunch is maybe the most famous family show of all time. It showed a blended family living in a perfect house with AstroTurf in the backyard. Robert Reed was the actor who brought Mike Brady to life. He was a serious actor who actually studied Shakespeare. To be honest, he sometimes hated being on a silly sitcom. He would argue with the writers because he wanted the show to be more realistic. But Robert Reed had a secret life that he kept hidden from the public for decades. You see, while he was playing the straight-laced father on TV, he was a gay man living in the closet. Back in the 70s and 80s, he felt he could not be open about who he was without ruining his career. This double life caused him a lot of stress. But the real tragedy struck later in his life. In 1991, Robert was diagnosed with colon cancer. This is a disease where harmful cells grow in the large intestine. Doctors tried to treat him, but his health was complicated by something else. Robert Reed had also contracted HIV. This virus attacks the immune system and makes it hard for the body to fight off other diseases. Because of the stigma back then, only his closest friends knew the truth. The combination of the cancer and his weakened immune system was too much for his body to handle. He passed away in 1992 at the age of 59. It was a shock to the world. The man who taught us all how to be good kids was gone. Robert Reed shielded the world from his pain. But our next actor was a loud, grumpy grandpa on screen who had a heart of gold until a disease in his bones took him away. 3. Peter Boyle on Everybody Loves. Raymond.
I say they're faking it. If I weren't loving these chips so much, I'd go back in there and poke a few holes in their phony, happy divorce crap.
Everybody Loves Raymond was a monster hit in the 90s and 2000s. The show was about a sports writer named Ray, but the real star was his grumpy father, Frank Barone. Frank was played by Peter Boyle. Frank sat in his armchair with his pants unbuttoned, yelling at the television and calling people idiots. He was hilarious because he said the things we all wanted to say but were too polite to say out loud. Peter Boyle had a long career before he was Frank Barone. He played a monster in the movie Young Frankenstein and was friends with legends like John Lennon. He was actually a very gentle and spiritual man in real life, totally different from the loud character he played on TV. But near the end of the show, Peter started having health problems. In 1999, he had a heart attack on set. He survived that and kept working. He was tough as nails. However, a few years later, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. This is a type of cancer that forms in the plasma cells in your bone marrow. It causes your bones to become weak and brittle. It also damages your kidneys and immune system. Peter fought this disease quietly. He did not want people to feel sorry for him. He finished the run of Everybody Loves Raymond, giving us laughs right up until the finale. He died in 2006 at the age of 71. When he passed, the lights on Broadway in New York were dimmed to honor him. Frank Barone was always seen sitting in his living room, but our next neighbor was famous for hiding his face behind a fence, and the man who played him was hiding a lung condition that eventually caught up with him. 4. Earl Hindman on Home Improvement.
Hey, Wilson, what are you doing?
Tim, I'm pondering my bonseki.
Isn't it funny how guys never get tired of doing that?
If you watched Home Improvement in the 90s, you know exactly who Wilson is. He was the wise neighbor who lived next door to Tim, the toolman tailor. The running gag of the show was that we never saw the bottom half of Wilson's face. He was always behind a fence holding a plant or wearing a scarf. He gave Tim advice on life, usually quoting famous philosophers or historical figures. The man with the gentle voice behind that fence was Earl Hindman. Earl loved the joke of the hidden face. He thought it was funny that he could walk down the street and nobody recognized him because they did not know what his chin looked like. He was a very private man who loved his wife and his quiet life in Connecticut. But Earl had a habit that was very common for men of his generation. He was a heavy smoker for many years. We all know now how dangerous that is, but back then, people did not think about it as much. In 2003, just a few years after Home Improvement ended, Earl was diagnosed with lung cancer. Lung cancer is one of the toughest diseases to beat because it is often found late. Earl faced his diagnosis with bravery, but the disease was aggressive. He passed away later that year at the age of 61. It is sad to think that the voice of wisdom behind the fence was taken by a disease caused by smoking. He spent years helping Tim Taylor build hot rods and fix marriages, but he could not fix his own lungs. Wilson was the neighbor we all wished we had, but our next star was the best friend every girl wanted in the 90s, until a silent killer took her far too young. 5. Yvette Wilson on Moesha.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you who your new friend was. He just waving hey at me.
The 90s were a golden era for sitcoms, and Moesha was one of the best. It starred the pop singer Brandy, but her crew of friends was just as important. One of the standout characters was Andell Wilkerson. She was the owner of the Den, the hangout spot where all the kids went after school. Andell was played by the funny and talented Yvette Wilson. She was the older sister figure who gave tough love and good advice. She was so popular that she also starred in the spin-off show called The Parkers. Yvette Wilson had a smile that could light up a room. She made everything look easy. But after her time on TV ended, she faced a very difficult road. Yvette started having kidney problems. Kidney failure is a serious condition where your body cannot filter waste anymore. She needed a transplant, which is a long and scary process. But while she was dealing with her kidneys, doctors found something even worse. She had cervical cancer. Cervical cancer affects the lower part of the uterus. It can be very aggressive if it is not caught early. Yvette was fighting a war on two fronts. Her kidneys were failing, and the cancer was attacking her body. She tried to stay positive and asked fans for prayers and support. Sadly, the combination of these illnesses was too much. She passed away in 2012. She was only 48 years old. It was a huge shock to everyone who grew up watching her keep the kids in line at the Den. Yvette was gone way too soon. But speaking of growing up on TV, our next actor was the ultimate high school nerd who sadly found himself in a very grown-up nightmare. 6. Dustin Diamond on Saved by the Bell.
We've been over it already.
Okay, so how many times did my name come up?
None, zero, zilch, zippity-doo-dah.
There is probably not a single person born in the 80s or 90s who does not know Screech Powers. Saved by the Bell was the show that defined a generation. It followed a group of friends at Bayside High. You had the cool guy, the jock, the cheerleader, and then you had Screech. Dustin Diamond played the curly-haired nerd who was always making weird noises and getting into trouble. He was the comic relief, and he played that role for over 10 years in different versions of the show. Being a child star is hard. After the show ended, Dustin struggled to find his place in Hollywood. He had some legal troubles and made some bad career choices trying to stay relevant. He became a bit of a controversial figure. But no matter what you thought of his adult life, nobody deserved the hand he was dealt in 2020. Dustin started feeling a pain in his neck and found a lump. He ignored it for a little while, thinking it was nothing. When he finally went to the doctor, the news was terrible. He had stage 4 small cell carcinoma. This is a very rare and aggressive type of lung cancer. The shocking part is that Dustin said he was not a smoker. Doctors think it might have started somewhere else and spread. The cancer moved incredibly fast. Just 3 weeks after he was diagnosed and started treatment, Dustin passed away. He was only 44 years old. The boy who spent his life trying to make us laugh was gone in the blink of an eye. It is a tragic end for a Bayside Tiger. But our next actress was a petite powerhouse who presided over a chaotic courtroom, only to face a long battle with the same disease. 7. Marky Post on Night Court.
Dan? Tell me the truth. Is there a little tiny mark there?
Night Court was a wild show. It was set during the night shift of a Manhattan municipal court. The judge was a magician, the prosecutor was a shallow ladies' man, and the bailiffs were giants. In the middle of all this chaos was the public defender, Christine Sullivan. She was played by the beautiful Marky Post. Christine was the moral compass of the show. She was smart, tough, and always tried to do the right thing for her clients. Marky Post brought a real warmth to the role. Marky was a beloved figure in Hollywood. She worked constantly, appearing in shows like The Fall Guy and Hearts of Fire. She was known for being incredibly kind and professional. But for the last 4 years of her life, she was fighting a secret war. Marky was diagnosed with cancer. She decided not to let the disease stop her from doing what she loved. She kept working on projects and making appearances even while she was getting chemotherapy. She called her work her side gig, while fighting cancer was her full-time job. It shows just how strong she was. Sadly, the battle eventually came to an end. In 2021, Markie Post passed away from complications of the disease. She was 70 years old. Her co-stars from Night Court were heartbroken. They remembered her not just as a great actress, but as a wonderful friend who never complained, even when she was in pain. Markie was a tough lawyer on TV. But our next star had a voice deeper than most men and a wit sharper than a knife, but she could not outrun a diagnosis that took her breath away. 8. Suzanne Pleshette on The Bob Newhart Show.
He's right, Howard. The bag doesn't have to match.
In the 1970s, The Bob Newhart Show was a classic. Bob Newhart played a psychologist, and Suzanne Pleshette played his wife, Emily Hartley. Their relationship was one of the best on TV. They did not have kids, which was rare for a TV couple back then. They just enjoyed each other's company and had witty banter. Suzanne had a very distinct voice. It was husky and deep, which made her sound very sophisticated and cool. Suzanne was a heavy smoker for most of her life. In Hollywood during her era, almost everyone smoked. It was part of the lifestyle. But years later, that habit caught up with her. In 2006, she went to the doctor for what she thought was a simple cough. The doctors found a spot on her lung. It was lung cancer. It was the size of a grain of sand, so they thought they caught it early. She had surgery and chemotherapy, but things got more complicated. She developed a lung infection that made it hard to breathe. Then, in a cruel twist, she was found to have more tumors. She fought hard, even attending a reunion for the Bob Newhart Show in a wheelchair. She wanted to see her old friends one last time. In 2008, just days before her 71st birthday, Suzanne passed away. The woman with the coolest voice in sitcom history was silenced by the damage done to her lungs. She was a legend, but our next actress was so popular she got her own show, and she managed to survive a terminal diagnosis for way longer than anyone expected. 9. Valerie Harper on Rhoda.
You got a good ear there. I mean, most people think I'm from St. Paul.
Mary Tyler Moore was the queen of TV in the 70s, but her best friend on the show almost stole the spotlight. That was Rhoda Morgenstern, played by Valerie Harper. Rhoda was the New Yorker who wrapped her hair in scarves and was always on a diet. Fans loved her so much that she got her own spin-off show called Simply Rhoda. Valerie Harper won 4 Emmy Awards because she was just that good. She made you feel like you knew her. Valerie faced a health scare in 2009 when she had lung cancer. She had surgery and beat it. But in 2013, the doctors gave her devastating news. They found that the cancer cells had spread into the membranes surrounding her brain. It is a very rare condition called leptomeningeal carcinomatosis. The doctors told her she only had 3 months to live. It was a death sentence. But Valerie Harper was a fighter. She did not accept that timeline. She tried experimental treatments and kept a positive attitude. She even went on the show Dancing with the Stars after her diagnosis to show people she was still alive and kicking. She defied the odds and lived for 6 more years. She eventually passed away in 2019 at the age of 79. She proved that doctors do not know everything and that a strong spirit can keep you going longer than science can explain. She was a miracle, but our next actor created a show that changed history, yet his own history was cut short by a disease in his throat. 10. Mike Evans on The Jeffersons.
Up in Harlem? No. Well, now I got 2 more, but one's yellow with stripes and the other's purple with checks. You know, for when I'm with my people. Oh, yeah.
We all know the song about moving on up to the East Side. The Jeffersons was a spin-off of All in the Family. featuring George and Louise Jefferson. Their son was Lionel Jefferson. Lionel was the cool, calm engineering student who had to deal with his crazy father. The original Lionel was played by Mike Evans. He had a great afro and a charming smile, but Mike Evans was more than just an actor. He was also a writer. Believe it or not, Mike Evans was one of the creators of the show Good Times. That show was huge because it showed a black family living in the projects of Chicago facing real issues. Mike was a creative genius, but sadly, his life was cut short. Mike was diagnosed with throat cancer. This is often linked to smoking or other lifestyle factors, but it can also just happen. Mike stepped away from the spotlight in his later years. He invested in real estate in California and lived a quiet life. The cancer took a heavy toll on his voice, the tool of his trade. He passed away in 2006 at the relatively young age of 57. It is a shame because a mind that creative definitely had more stories to tell. He gave us Lionel and he gave us Good Times, leaving a legacy that is still felt today. Mike Evans moved on up to the sky. But our next star was a child actress who practically grew up in our living rooms, only to have a very sad and lonely end in a trailer park. 11. Erin Moran on Happy Days.
Listen, Frederick is an interesting man who happens to be in town for 3 days. Why are you making such a big deal?
Well, I just want you to be careful because relationships have a way of getting out of hand. I don't want you to be hurt.
Mom.
Happy Days was the show that made the 50s look cool again. The Cunningham family was the center of the show. You had Richie, the good boy, and his little sister Joni. Joni was played by Erin Moran. We watched her grow from a little girl with braces into a young woman who fell in love with Chachi. Joni and Chachi became such a popular couple that they got their own show. Erin Moran was America's sweetheart, but life after Happy Days was not happy for Erin. Like many child stars, she had trouble finding work as an adult. The money dried up. She struggled with personal demons and depression. She ended up losing her home in California and moved to a trailer park in Indiana with her husband. It was a long fall from the bright lights of Hollywood. In 2017, reports came out that Erin had passed away. At first, rumors flew around that she died from substances because of her troubled past, but the coroner's report revealed the heartbreaking truth. Erin had stage 4 squamous cell carcinoma of the throat. It was likely skin cancer that had spread. Her husband later said that she had only found out about the cancer a few months before she died. By the time they found it, it was too late to treat. She ran out of time and resources. She died holding her husband's hand. At the age of 56, it is a tragedy when a star burns out that way. But our next actor was famous for playing a confused boss on a show about nothing, and he faced a very common killer. 12. Richard Hurd on Seinfeld.
2 nights ago, they pulled a big one. They took a pitching machine, a batting cage, the infield tarp, and all of Mr. Steinbrenner's vitamins.
Seinfeld is often called the greatest sitcom ever made. It had amazing side characters. One of the best was Mr. Wilhelm. He was George Costanza's boss at the New York Yankees. Mr. Wilhelm was played by Richard Hurd. He was always giving George important assignments that George would inevitably mess up. Mr. Wilhelm was a bit eccentric and sometimes seemed totally lost, which made for great comedy. Richard Hurd was a veteran actor who had been in everything from Star Trek to horror movies like Get Out. He was also a painter and a musician. He lived a long and full life, but in his 80s he faced a diagnosis of colon cancer. Colon cancer is the 3rd most common cancer in the U.S. It often starts as small growths called polyps. Richard fought the disease for a while. Because he was older, treatments were harder on his body. He passed away in 2020 at his home in Los Angeles. He was 87 years old. He left behind a huge body of work. Every time you see George Costanza sweating in his office, you have Richard Hurd to thank for the laughs. Mr. Wilhelm was baffled by George, but our next actress gave voice to a teacher who had to deal with the worst student in history, Bart Simpson. 13. Marcia Wallace on The Simpsons.
Boo yourself. Our demands are simple: a small cost of living increase and some better equipment and supplies for your children.
Ha! That was the signature laugh of Edna Krabappel, the fourth-grade teacher on The Simpsons. She was constantly tired, single, and dealing with Bart Simpson's pranks. The woman who gave Edna her cynical but lovable voice was Marcia Wallace. Before The Simpsons, she was famous for being the receptionist on The Bob Newhart Show. She had bright red hair and a big personality. Marcia Wallace was a survivor. She was first diagnosed with breast cancer in 1985. She fought it and became a huge advocate for cancer awareness. She spoke to groups all over the country telling women to get checked. She stayed cancer-free for over 20 years. But cancer is a sneaky enemy. In 2020, Marcia's health took a turn. She developed pneumonia, which is an infection in the lungs. While treating that, doctors realized the breast cancer had returned, or that complications from her past treatments were catching up with her. She passed away at age 70. The producers of The Simpsons did something very respectful. They decided to retire the character of Edna Krabappel. They felt that no one else could do the voice justice. In the show, they added a small tribute where her husband, Ned Flanders, looks at a picture of her and says he misses her laugh. We all miss that laugh. But our next actor was a superhero first, and then became the weirdest mayor in cartoon history. 14. Adam West on Family Guy.
It's not the Griffins, you moron! The rest of my light bright pieces! My name isn't Adam Wee.
If you grew up in the 60s, Adam West was Batman. He was the Caped Crusader in the colorful, campy TV show. But if you grew up in the 2000s, you know him as Mayor Adam West on Family Guy. He played a fictional, crazy version of himself who was the mayor of Quahog. He was absolutely hilarious, doing things like marrying his own hand or rolling around in toxic waste to get superpowers. Adam West had a career resurgence thanks to Family Guy. He loved voicing the character and making fun of his own image. He was working and active well into his 80s. But secretly, he was fighting leukemia. Leukemia is a cancer of the blood-forming tissues, including the bone marrow. It causes your body to make too many abnormal white blood cells. Adam kept his condition private because he wanted to keep entertaining his fans. He did not want people to worry. He died in 2017 at the age of 88. After he passed, the city of Los Angeles projected the bat signal onto City Hall as a tribute. It was a fitting send-off for a true hero of television. He was the bright knight. But our next actress was a golden girl who was actually a Marine before she became a TV legend. 15. Beatrice Arthur on Maud B.
Walter. Oh.
Maud, you've got to stop hitting yourself.
I can't, Vivian. The pain takes my mind off.
Off what?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Arthur was a force of nature. She was tall, she had a deep voice, and she did not take nonsense from anyone. She became famous as Maud, the liberal feminist cousin of Archie Bunker. Maud was a groundbreaking show that dealt with serious issues, but she became a global icon as Dorothy Zbornak on The Golden Girls. Dorothy was the smart, sarcastic one who had to deal with her roommate's stupidity. Before she was an actress, Bea Arthur was actually a truck driver in the Marines during World War II. She was tough, but later in her life, she faced a foe she could not intimidate. She developed lung cancer. Bea was a very private person. She did not want the media circus around her illness. She kept to her home in Los Angeles, surrounded by her family and her dogs. She passed away in 2009 at the age of 86. Her co-stars from The Golden Girls were devastated. They had spent 7 years sitting around that kitchen table eating cheesecake. Bea left behind a legacy of strong female characters. She showed that you could be funny, smart, and intimidating all at the same time. Bea was the leader of the pack. But our next actress died right as she was landing the biggest role of her career, leaving a hole in a famous TV family. 16. Diana Hyland on 8 is Enough.
Or blue. Don't you think I have enough on? You can't be too thin, too rich, or too attractive. I know that's blasphemy in this day and age of women's lib, but it's the truth.
You might not know the name Diana Hyland as well as the others, but her story is one of the saddest. In 1977, a new show called 8 is Enough was starting. It was about a family with 8 kids. Diana Hyland was cast as the mother, Joan Bradford. She filmed the first 4 episodes of the series. She was beautiful and talented, and it looked like she was going to be a huge star on a hit show. At the same time, she was in a romantic relationship with a young actor named John Travolta. They had met on a movie set and fell in love, even though she was 18 years older than him. Everything seemed perfect. But Diana had been diagnosed with breast cancer previously, and she thought she had beaten it. Tragically, the cancer returned and spread while she was filming the show. Her health declined rapidly. She died in John Travolta's arms in 1977. She was only 52. Because she died after filming only 4 episodes, the writers of 8 is Enough had to rewrite the entire series. They made the father a widower, and the first season dealt with the family mourning the loss of their mother. It was real grief mixed with TV drama. It was a heartbreaking start to a show. But speaking of mothers, our next star played the oldest mother on TV. But in real life, she was younger than her TV daughter. 17. Estelle Getty on The Golden Girls.
Jeweler? Jewish? I wonder if there's a connection. I think there's a connection between your brain and wallpaper paste.
Picture it, Sicily, 1922. That was the catchphrase of Sophia Petrillo, the little old lady on The Golden Girls. She was played by Estelle Getty. Sophia was famous for carrying a wicker purse and insulting everyone. The funny thing is, Estelle Getty was actually younger than Bea Arthur, who played her daughter Dorothy. It took hours of makeup to turn Estelle into the 80-year-old Sophia. Estelle was tiny, but she had a huge heart. She was an early activist for AIDS awareness when many people were afraid to talk about it. But as she got older, fans noticed something was wrong. Estelle started forgetting her lines. At first, people thought it was just old age, or maybe Alzheimer's. She struggled to remember things during reunions and interviews. It turned out to be Lewy body dementia. This is a cruel disease that affects thinking, memory, and movement. It is the same disease that Robin Williams had. It slowly robs a person of their ability to function. Estelle fought this for years, slowly fading away from the vibrant woman she was. She passed away in 2008 at 84. The woman who was the quickest wit on TV was silenced by a brain disease. Sophia was unbreakable on screen. But our next actor was famous for faking a heart attack until the day he wasn't faking anymore. 18. Red Fox on Sanford and Son.
Yes, it's wonderful, son. They're taking a child out the asphalt jungle and putting him in Lion Country Safari.
I'm coming, Elizabeth. This is the big one. Every episode of Sanford and Son featured Fred Sanford grabbing his chest and looking up to heaven, pretending to have a heart attack to get out of an argument. It was his signature move. Fred Sanford was a junk dealer who lived in a messy house with his son Lamont. Red Fox was the comedian who played him. He was a legend of stand-up comedy who broke down barriers for black entertainers. Red Fox lived a fast life. He spent money as fast as he made it. In 1991, he was on the set of a new show called The Royal Family. He was taking a break during rehearsals. Suddenly, he grabbed his chest and fell to the floor. The other actors on set actually thought he was doing his famous Elizabeth bit from Sanford and Son. They laughed at first, thinking he was joking. But then they realized he was not getting up. It was a massive heart attack. He was rushed to the hospital, but he died that evening. He was 68 years old. The irony is tragic. The man who made millions of people laugh by faking heart problems eventually succumbed to the real thing right there on a soundstage.